The backflip. This historic feat of acrobatic excellence has been handed down and progressed throughout the generations, and to this day still remains the number one trick to do when you're 6 pints deep and you're trying to impress the ladies. However, one group of people have managed to take everything we knew about the backflip and flip it on its head. I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. And those people are Freerunners. In today's video, we will explore exactly how Freerunners revolutionized the backflip. Before I get into it, I want to shout out today's video sponsor, Vite Ramen, a company literally founded by a group of Freerunners. Vite Ramen create nutritious ramen noodles. These have become a go-to meal for me when I'm training parkour or editing videos. Each pack has 29 grams of complete protein, 25% of your daily values for your vitamins and minerals. On top of that, they're just really delicious, quick and easy. So go use my code JimmyTheGiant10 on checkout. The link is in the description and pinned to the top comment. Anyway, back to the video. No one truly knows who did the first backflip, or where backflips even came from. The first ever documentation of the backflip came from the 14th century, with a piece of artwork entitled The Bull Leaping Fresco, which depicted what is thought to be a backflip off of a wild boar. Basically, humans have been sending it since the beginning of time. However, the first people to take the silly party trick of a backflip and turn it into a serious disciplined move were, you guessed it, gymnasts. Okay, before gymnasts start raging at me, that was a joke. I love gymnasts. I mean, even if you do need a spongy soft floor just to do a simple backflip. As far back as 300 AD, gymnastics was used to keep the Greek populace fit and healthy. Originally called gymnos, which translates to naked. So gymnastics translates to exercising naked. I'll let you guys make your own mind up about that one. However, it wasn't until 1896 that gymnastics was recognised as an official Olympic sport. And it was at that moment that everything would change for the good old trusty backflip. The introduction of gymnastics to the Olympics was the first major turning point for the backflip. Gymnastics was now a serious competition, pushing the boundaries of what the human body could achieve in a skin-tight leotard. It's really hard to trace the very first evolutions of the backflip, but the backflip would see one of its first major evolutions in 1972 from a 17-year-old named Olga Korbut, who is widely credited for bringing global attention to gymnastics in the 1972 Olympics in Munich. I mean, she was doing backflip re-grabs to a bar and layout backflips with her face an inch away from the bar all the way back in the 70s. Fair play, gymnasts. However, as gymnasts progressed the backflip into the double backflip, the triple backflip, gymnasts had by and large kind of considered the backflip to be done. Like, the skill level maxed out. It wasn't going to get better than this. And it was at this point the humble old backflip was tossed to the side like an old toy at Christmas. However, that wouldn't be the end for the trusty old backflip. You see, one man's rubbish is another man's treasure. Over the years, sports like cliff diving, breakdancing, martial arts tricking had become increasingly popular and were starting to take the backflip and put it into new contexts. But then, in the 90s, the backflip would finally fall in the loving hands of Freerunners, who would change the simple backflip forever. Freerunning and parkour spawned out of the imaginations of street kids in Leeds who didn't see the confines of their urban environment as a prison, but rather as a playground to let their imaginations run wild. In 2002, David Bell would kick off the iconic advert for Rush Hour with a gainer, which is just a backflip going forward. This was one of the first instances of parkour on television, and presented a totally new environment for the gainer, a trick that had been done in gymnastics for years, but this time it had been done outside on a brick wall landing onto hard surface. This was a major level up for the backflip, and would plant the seed for what was about to come. But let's hold up for a second, because if I don't mention this now, people will be annoyed. There was a very well-known and important person who, if I don't mention, I wouldn't be telling the full story. Before the word parkour was even a thing, someone had already been doing all of this. And that someone is none other than Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan had adapted his martial arts background into chase scenes that were featured in movies. And he was doing this throughout the 80s and the 90s. Jackie Chan was effectively pioneering the sport before it even had a name. One of the many standout moments from Jackie Chan's career was his wall flip, which throughout the early 2000s would become incredibly popular in the parkour world. But comment below if you want me to make a full video about Jackie Chan and parkour. I think that'll be really interesting. In as early as 2006, the double backflip had already been done outside, as had the double gainer. Backflips and gainers would be taken to new heights and became even more impressive. The sitting backflip that gymnasts usually do off a bar had been taken outdoors onto concrete, and Jackie Chan's wall flip had already been leveled up with a full twist and a double fall. These level ups were impressive, but something was missing. Sure, Freerunners had improved the backflip, but they hadn't really invented anything yet. But that was all about to change in 2007 with one single groundbreaking clip. Arguably one of the most notable and mind-blowing evolutions to the backflip came from Daniel Ilabaka, all the way back in 2005 with the Kong Gainer. To give you some understanding of how insane this moment was, the Kong Gainer had been considered a hypothetical move. People had spoke about it, but the general consensus was it was impossible. Daniel Ilabaka would come along and show everyone they were wrong. However, I found something that kind of contradicts what most people believe about the Kong Gainer. The first instance of a Kong Gainer that I could find came out in 1994 from a Nebraska gymnast called Sumner Darling. Sumner performed what they call a hecht back tuck or something like that at the 1994 NCAA Championships. But it's very unlikely that Daniel Ilabaka would have ever been aware of this clip. It took me about half an hour to find this clip, and that's in 2020. But either way, taking the Kong Gainer outside, not on a sprung floor, but on a hard wall, very high up, landing onto grass. This was revolutionary for the backflip. The Kong Gainer marked the first moment that Freerunners took the backflip into their own hands. As word of the Kong Gainer spread, every top-level athlete rushed to go and learn it. Pasha the Boss added a full twist to the Kong Gainer back in 2010, which itself has quickly been progressed. And over time, the Kong Gainer would stop being this isolated move that you'd do on its own and become a move that people would just throw into lines casually. As the technique for the Kong Gainer developed, one cold winter day in London, a 17-year-old freerunner by the name of Verky would do the unimaginable. In 2018, Verky would do the Kong Double Gainer. This was a mind-blowing moment for the whole sport, and really marked how far parkour has progressed. Still to this day, the Kong Double Gainer has only been done by a handful of athletes. As athletes started to find new ways to use the backflip, more and more crazy variations would emerge. For instance, the castaway, which was originally called the palm drop. This is another movement that freerunners have just progressed beyond belief. This move is thought to be adopted from cliff diving, where you would have an insane amount of distance to perform it. But in as early as 2008, freerunners would be taking this move outside. The earliest I could find came from Blue in 2008. I mean, fair enough, he did it in a gym, but in 2008, Jenks had already taken this move outside, and even more impressively, had done it from a handstand. And then in 2008, Daniel Arroyo would evolve the move further with what was called the cast bomb. The cast bomb was important because previously the castaway was always an awkward, clunky move that you couldn't really use in runs. So the cast bomb came along and turned this static move into a dynamic move that you could use in lines. Over time, the castaway technique was progressed and became snappier and quicker, which led to the castaway gainer. And today, the castaway is kind of considered an average move between medium and high level athletes. And similar to how the Kong Gainer started on really high up walls and then went lower, the castaway did the same thing, but it kind of got ridiculous. And it got lower and lower and lower. Within a decade of its invention, the double castaway had already been done. A few really early ones came from PK Clan, although it was on snow and sand from really high up. People have since done it in a more convincing manner, like Flip Like Z and Eric Freerunner. Z was also the world's first to do the swing double cast. DK had done the castaway fall in 2013, and I'm probably missing some vital progressions to the castaway, but you kind of get the idea. Freerunners have this way of taking a move and then completely pushing it as far as humanly possible. Doing them further off the ground, lower to the ground, adding a twist, adding a double, you name it, freerunners will do it. And that is one of the beauties of parkour and freerunning, which is very different to gymnastics. Parkour and freerunning aren't bound to the same rules and restrictions as gymnastics. Pretty much anything goes. You'll never see a cork or even a side flip in gymnastics, usually because of safety reasons. Like all of these trigger moves right here, you're literally not allowed to do in gymnastics. You would score 0 points if you did this. And it's arguably these rules and restrictions that left gymnastics, who were the pioneers of the backflip, to not really progress it that much further, especially compared to what parkour and freerunning have done with it in the last few decades. Oh, and trickers. Trickers have to get a shout out. They have done a lot for the backflip as well. Probably a little bit more than freerunners. The reason why Daniel Ilabaka's Congainer was so important was because it showed freerunners that you could put backflips into different contexts. And over the past 10 years, the backflip has been put into a lot of weird contexts, including the worm backflip, which I think came from Waldy Muller, and now Joe Scandrett is the absolute king of these. The wall back handspring, the pimp flip, which I believe was a creation of Owen Hegarty, the gate flip, which was named after its inventor, Gatian Bouliet. I know I'm probably not saying that right. The gate then got lower, and then obviously doubled. And then you got the ginger flip. The ginger flip was named after Toby Seeger. Not because he created it, but because he did them a lot, and he had ginger hair. And then obviously it got doubled. And the forever infamous double layout backflip that came from PK Clan all the way back in the day. And even in the last few weeks, the world's first double palm flip happened, and that was by an athlete called Ilya. Genuinely, I thought this was fake when I saw it first, but apparently he really did it. Freerunners have even built on from moves that gymnasts do. Moves such as the half in, back out, which is something that gymnasts do on a sprung floor with a very fast run up and powerful round off. Freerunners like Kalen Chan are putting this into lines after doing Congainer precisions off a rail to a thin wall.
Got this, dude. Get it, get it.
Yeah! Yes! I mean, come on. After all this progression, you might think there's very little else freerunners could do with the backflip. However, that's not even nearly close to the truth. Throughout the mid to late 2000s into the early 2010s, one athlete would come along and bring a totally new attitude to the backflip. And that man is Alfred Scott. If I was to try and make a list of all the backflip variations he's probably come up with, we would be here all day. Alfred was one of the first, if not the first, to do a lache triple backflip outside. He took best trick at Red Bull's Art of Motion with the cast gainer, along with many other strange and weird variations to the backflip. Sadly, Alfred Scott has taken time out of parkour due to an injury, but in his time, he was one of the most revolutionary athletes in the game. However, there was one criticism a lot of people had about Alfred, and that was that he didn't really have a lot of style. Or at least that's what people said. So, as pretty much a middle finger to people saying that, he created a video called Dead Style, in which he just shows his ability to come up with interesting and unique ways of implementing tricks. This ability Alfred had to come up with tricks in his brain and bring them to reality was unparalleled. This attitude that Alfred brought really changed how people saw flips and tricks, and utilising them in new and interesting contexts. We miss you, Alfred. Come back. Alright, we get it. Freerunners can do cool flips. What else have you got? Well, you see, doing cool backflips isn't enough for freerunners, and it never was going to be. At the heart of it, people who focus on parkour like doing jumps a lot, and people who focus on freerunning like doing flips a lot. At some point, these two different mentalities were going to meet in the middle. So what happens when you mix backflips with jumps? You get backflip precisions. In 2018, Verky, yet again, came along and did a world's first with the Congainer Precision. This was mind-blowing. This was a move that hadn't even been imagined in video games, and Verky was here doing it in real life on concrete. The level of skill, accuracy, and bravery to do this is mind-blowing. And Verky did it insanely cleanly. As well, Verky has taken the castaway and done castaway precisions, and plenty of other crazy moves. Another move that you could argue Alfred Scott helped pioneer was the splat backflip, which is basically when you jump at a wall, hit it, and do a backflip. This move landed in the hands of Dom Tomato and Joe Scandrett, who just took it to another level. The backflip precision itself was mastered by Joe Marks, who was one of the first to bring the idea of a backflip precision outdoors into reality. Anthony Flock then did this insanely clean gainer pre.
What?
As did DK with his running gainer pre. And even currently, Jan's, I'm probably going to say his name wrong, so I'll just say his Instagram, Jan's Flipping 4, we'll go with it, has progressed the backflip precision to a rail.
Yeah.
Although sometimes I don't always get a plan. Dom Tomato has recently been progressing the cheat gainer precision. And I can't forget to mention Leonardo's progressions to the gainer roof gap. That led him to gainering the iconic manpower gap, which I made a whole video on, which I'll link in the description. And beyond just being technically impressive, people have been leveling up the style of backflips as well, like Spin Boys, Josh Malone, Archie, etc. Putting them off axis with grabs, just making them look cooler. And finally, I've got to give a special mention to, I think it's pronounced Yaya Cilia, the boss, probably not, who took the standing backflip on grass and doubled it. I mean, he's a tricker, he's not a free runner, so we can't claim that one, but my God, man. From the Minoan fresco backflipping off a wild boar to my man doing a standing double backflip on flat ground. I mean, sure, it took over 2,000 years of progression, but we did it. So what's the future for the backflip? Honestly, it's hard to say, but in my opinion, it is by buying the Parkour bucket list. This is the Parkour bucket list. This is a list of 50 different parkour challenges. Some are funny, some are old school, some are new school. Down here we got Watch Soul Destroyer. Here we've got Watch Jump London or Jump Britain. And as you can see, there's loads more about all things parkour. Honestly, I'm super excited to have this out, so you can buy this now on jimmythegiant.co.uk. This is my completed list. I'm not gonna show you because I wanna keep the artwork a surprise. Go get it. Anyway, so what do I think is the future of the backflip? Well, if I know one thing, and that's parkour. Freerunners have this ability to take the unimaginable and make it into reality like that. I can't click with that finger. Like that. So picture the most absurd thing you can think of, and in 5 years, Verky's probably going to do it. I mean, I haven't even touched on backfalls and corks, and people are already doing cork precisions. And fundamentally, that is the beauty of parkour. If a freerunner can imagine it, it'll probably get done. Comment below your favourite backflip progression or where you think the backflip might be in 5 to 10 years. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like on this video. Peace.